I've always loved surprises, at least I used to. The little gestures that told you someone had thought about you, planned something special, cared enough to make an ordinary day remarkable. My wife, Elise, was good at that sort of thing. Or maybe she just used to be. Somewhere along the way, the surprises turned into secrets, and the thrill of not knowing became a kind of quiet dread I couldn't shake. It began 3 weeks ago on a Thursday morning, the kind that pretends to be ordinary. The sunlight spilled through the kitchen window, bouncing off the chrome kettle as I poured my coffee. Elise was sitting at the table with her laptop, hair tied back, dressed for work in that way that made her look effortlessly polished. She had that faint smile, the one I'd once fallen in love with, while tapping away at her screen. I asked, "What's got you smiling like that?" She looked up, startled, then quickly shut the laptop. "Oh, nothing. Just work stuff." That should have been my first clue. Elise was a music journalist, and her work stuff rarely made her smile that way, not unless it involved an artist she adored. But I let it go, chalking it up to my overactive curiosity. After all, we'd been married 8 years. Trust was supposed to come naturally by now. Still, I couldn't help but notice how she avoided my eyes when she stood up to refill her coffee. That evening, when she left her purse on the counter, I didn't mean to snoop. Truly, I was looking for my car keys. I thought she might have borrowed them. And that's when I saw the envelope. Thick, glossy, with a metallic seal from Soundscape Events. The logo was familiar. They handled major concerts in the city. Without thinking, I slid the flap open just enough to peek inside. 2 front-row tickets. The artist's name leapt off the page like a spotlight. Julian Vale. Elise's favorite musician. The one whose songs she played on repeat during our first year together. The one whose vinyls she treated like sacred relics. She'd once joked she'd trade a kidney to see him perform live. And here they were, not just tickets, but front-row seats. My pulse kicked up, and for a moment, I felt something warm, hopeful. Maybe she was planning a surprise. Maybe that's what the smile was for. I placed the envelope back exactly as I'd found it, even aligning the edges like a guilty man hiding fingerprints. For the rest of the day, I was a fool with a secret grin. I imagined the reveal, maybe dinner reservations before the concert, her laughing at my surprise, the two of us singing along to songs that had scored our early years. For the first time in months, I let myself believe we were finding our way back to that version of us. But the weekend came and went, and she said nothing. By the following Thursday, curiosity had turned into a restless itch. Elise seemed distracted, smiling at her phone, taking longer to get ready in the mornings. When I asked about her weekend plans, she gave me a vague, "Might grab dinner with some friends." "Anyone I know?" I asked. She hesitated. "Just people from work. You wouldn't know them." That wasn't unusual on its own. Her job had her meeting all sorts of industry types. But her tone carried a brittle edge, like she was afraid I'd press further. I wanted to believe her. God, I really did. But something in her eyes told me there was more to the story. On Saturday, she left around 6 in the evening, wearing a black dress I hadn't seen in years, the one she used to save for special occasions. I watched her apply her lipstick in the mirror by the door, her reflection catching mine. She smiled faintly, but it wasn't for me. "Don't wait up," she said lightly. "Might be a late night." And then she was gone. I stood in the silence she left behind, every tick of the clock feeling louder than it should. The envelope was still in her purse. Or so I thought. When I checked later, yes, I checked again, it was gone. The truth landed like a cold splash of water. The concert was tonight. I pulled up the event online. Julian Vale, one night only, downtown arena. Doors at 7. I told myself I'd just drive by, just to see, to prove that I was overreacting. But by the time I reached the venue, the crowd had already gathered. Neon lights, laughter spilling into the night, that familiar hum of anticipation before live music. And there, among the throng of fans near the front entrance, I saw her. Elise stood under the marquee, radiant in the glow of the lights. And beside her, laughing, close enough that their shoulders brushed, was a man I didn't recognize. Tall, effortlessly stylish, holding 2 tickets that matched the ones from her envelope. She reached for his arm as they walked in. I don't remember much after that, just a hollow ringing in my ears and a cold tightness in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I sat in my car long after the concert started, listening to the muffled bass through the walls of the arena. At some point, I realized I hadn't even turned the engine off. The headlights pointed at nothing. She bought 2 front-row tickets. I never got invited. That night, she came home past midnight, cheeks flushed, her voice soft and airy as she mumbled something about networking opportunities. I pretended to be half asleep on the couch, just watching as she quietly removed her heels and tiptoed upstairs. Her happiness had a glow to it that wasn't meant for me. Over the next few days, I tried to keep life ordinary. Breakfasts, bills, bedtime routines. But the ordinary had started to rot around the edges. I found myself watching her too closely, how she smiled at her phone, how often she checked messages with that hidden half-grin. One morning, I caught a glimpse of her lock screen. The same man. His name, Ryan. My stomach twisted. I tried to tell myself it was innocent, maybe a colleague, a musician she was covering. But deep down, I already knew better. I started piecing together small things. Late-night showers. Her perfume lingering longer than usual. The way she'd hum unfamiliar melodies, songs she claimed she must have heard somewhere. I became a stranger in my own home, analyzing her every gesture, desperate to find proof or comfort, whichever came first. Then, last night, she left her laptop open while putting the kids to bed. Her inbox flashed with new messages, one of which carried the subject line, "Last night was perfect." I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The first line read, "You looked beautiful under those lights. Can't stop thinking about it." That was enough. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling, the air around me suddenly too thin to breathe. The tickets weren't just an act of thoughtfulness. They were an escape, a doorway into another world where I didn't exist. As I sat in the dark living room, the muffled laughter of the neighborhood spilling faintly through the open window, a thought settled deep in my mind, cold, steady, and frighteningly calm. If she wanted to play a love story with someone else, then maybe it was time I rewrote the ending myself. The next morning, Elise acted as though nothing had changed. She hummed while making coffee, her hair still damp from a shower, her skin glowing the way it does after a good night's sleep. I sat at the kitchen island, watching her pour milk into her mug, stirring it in lazy circles. My heart felt like glass, intact on the surface but cracked beneath the weight of every movement, every word. "Sleep well?" she asked without looking up. "Yeah," I lied. "You?" "Pretty good." She smiled absently, the kind of smile people wear when they're remembering something nice. Something private. I wondered what she was seeing in her mind. The lights of the concert? The crowd screaming? Him beside her, their shoulders brushing as music filled the air? I stirred my own coffee, pretending not to notice how her phone kept lighting up on the counter. We had 2 kids, and they were my anchor that morning. Feeding them breakfast, tying shoes, packing lunches. It gave me something to do other than drown in the silence between Elise and me. When she left for work, she kissed my cheek, as if habit required it. Her lips brushed my skin, but there was no warmth in it, no spark of familiarity, just a ghost of routine. When the door closed, I exhaled. The laptop was still on the table. I hesitated for a long time before opening it, half hoping she'd changed her password. She hadn't. The email was still there, the one from Ryan, and others followed. Dozens of them. Some short, teasing exchanges about music and work, others more intimate, filled with half-hidden confessions and jokes I wasn't meant to understand. "You should have seen your face when the lights hit the stage. That dress will live rent-free in my mind forever. Next time, no front-row crowd to interrupt us." It was all there, in black and white. Proof. I closed the laptop and sat for what felt like hours, the sound of the fridge humming behind me. It wasn't rage I felt, not yet. Just a deep, quiet disbelief that somehow this life, the one I'd built so carefully, was crumbling without even the courtesy of a warning. That afternoon, I didn't go to work. I walked. Miles through the park, through the city, trying to clear the noise in my head. Every sound, the echo of footsteps, the distant music from a busker, the laughter of strangers, felt exaggerated, cruelly alive while I was numb. By evening, the numbness cracked. When she came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table, the concert envelope in front of me. I thought about confronting her right then, demanding the truth, asking who he was, why she'd done it. But when she walked through the door, something stopped me. She looked tired, carrying her bag, shoulders slumped. "Long day?" I asked. My voice surprised me, calm, almost gentle. She nodded. "You wouldn't believe the deadlines." I smiled faintly. "I believe it." She didn't notice the tickets on the table. Maybe she thought I was too trusting to ever go through her things. Maybe she was right, until now. After dinner, while she put the kids to bed, I walked into the garage, where the quiet pressed around me like a cocoon. I sat on the workbench, staring at the dim glow of the single bulb overhead. The smell of oil and wood filled the air, grounding me. My father used to say that when life gets complicated, you go to the simplest place you can find: a room, a task, something that reminds you who you are. So, I thought about what I was: a husband, a father, a man who had tried to do everything right. And yet, somehow, I'd become a background character in my own marriage. That night, she fell asleep easily beside me. Her breathing was even, peaceful, while I lay awake watching the ceiling fan spin shadows across the room. Around midnight, her phone buzzed softly. My pulse jumped. I turned slowly toward the nightstand. Another buzz. I waited until she turned, murmuring something incoherent in her sleep. Then, gently, I reached over and slid the phone from the table. There were messages, one from Ryan. Still thinking about last weekend. You looked unreal under those lights. Next time, we'll skip the crowd altogether. I stopped reading. The screen blurred. I put the phone back exactly where it had been, lying there in the darkness as the ceiling fan whispered above me. I imagined the two of them together, not just physically, but in the way she used to be with me, laughing at things only they understood, sharing secrets that didn't include my name anymore. By morning, I made a decision. If I confronted her outright, she'd deny it. If I accused her, she'd twist it, call me paranoid. She was too clever, too practiced. I needed certainty, undeniable proof, the kind you could hold in your hands and feel its weight. So I did something I never imagined myself doing. I installed a tracking app on her phone. It felt wrong, invasive. But love had already been violated. What did privacy matter now? The app was simple. It synced her location to mine, updating every few minutes. That first day, she really did go to work, stayed at the office, came home on time. It gave me a flicker of false hope. Maybe I'd misunderstood everything. Maybe those messages were harmless flirtation, the kind she'd shut down once she realized how it made me feel. But on Thursday night, her location shifted, not toward the office, not toward home. Downtown, the same part of the city where the concert had been. I drove out there without thinking. The streets shimmered in the glow of passing headlights. Her car was parked near a bar I didn't recognize, the Electric Vine. Through the front window, I saw her at the counter. She wasn't alone. Ryan sat beside her, his hand resting casually on her knee. She leaned in to whisper something, laughing softly, her fingers grazing his wrist. I froze, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. For 10 minutes, I couldn't move. I just sat there, watching, my mind flipping between disbelief and fury. The world outside the windshield blurred. When they stood to leave, I took a photo. Just one, shaky but clear enough. Her face turned toward him, his hand at her waist. That image burned into me like a brand. I drove home on autopilot, headlights cutting through fog, my heart pounding with something sharp and cold. She came home late again, whispering apologies about deadlines and late meetings. I nodded, pretending to be half asleep. She kissed me goodnight, unaware that my phone, in the dark, still tracked her lies. Lying there, staring at the ceiling, I thought of all the small things I'd missed, the half-truths, the softened edges of her explanations, the growing distance she wrapped in politeness. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, the anger settled into something else, something patient. If she wanted her secrets, I'd let her have them. For now, because I was done being the fool she thought I was. Next time she smiled that secret smile, she'd have no idea I'd already begun to dismantle her story, piece by piece. The following week unfolded like a film I couldn't stop watching, even as it twisted into something dark and unrecognizable. Every smile Elise offered became a performance. Every word, every touch, was rehearsed. She didn't know I was watching the stage lights flicker behind the curtain, catching glimpses of the truth she thought she'd hidden. By then, I'd stopped questioning if she was cheating. The question was how far she'd gone, and how far I was willing to go to expose it. The tracking app showed patterns. Monday, work. Tuesday, gym. Wednesday, work again. But Thursday nights? Always the same route downtown. The Electric Vine. That dim-lit bar with soft jazz, where people met to share secrets under the hum of neon and clinking glasses. I started keeping a journal, part evidence, part self-preservation. Times, dates, places. I told myself it wasn't obsession, it was order. If I wrote things down, I could contain the chaos clawing at my mind. I stopped sleeping properly. Every night, I'd listen to the rhythm of her breathing, steady and soft, and feel the space between us widen into an ocean. One evening, as she showered, her phone buzzed again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I read the message. Tomorrow's show just added a private after-party. You in? Her reply came seconds later. Wouldn't miss it. After-party. That was new. I checked his name, Ryan Keller. A producer, apparently. The kind of man who wore confidence like a tailored suit. I found his profile online. Smiling, charming, perfectly curated photos from festivals, studios, interviews. The kind of man Elise used to write articles about. The kind she used to admire from afar, before she decided admiration wasn't enough. That night, when she said she had to cover a late session, I almost laughed. Instead, I kissed her goodbye, helped her zip her coat, and smiled like nothing was wrong. When her car pulled out of the driveway, I waited 2 minutes, then followed. The city glowed in the reflection of rain-slick streets. I kept my distance, headlights dimmed. She parked in a quiet side street near the venue, a small private club hidden behind an unmarked door. I parked 2 blocks away, my hand slick on the steering wheel. Inside, the muffled thump of bass pulsed through the walls. People streamed in, dressed too well for an ordinary Thursday. I stayed outside, watching, until I saw them, Elise and Ryan. His hand rested on the small of her back, guiding her through the door like he'd done it before. I didn't follow them inside. Instead, I waited. The hours dragged. Rain came and went. Around midnight, laughter spilled from the doors as guests trickled out. Elise emerged last, her hair slightly tousled, her lipstick faded, her hand clutching Ryan's. He leaned close, whispered something in her ear, and she laughed, a sound I hadn't heard from her in months. The kind of laugh that used to be mine. She kissed him before getting into her car. Not the quick, guilty kind of kiss. It was slow, familiar, the kind of kiss that says, "I'll see you again soon." The world seemed to tilt slightly, like gravity had shifted, and I was suddenly standing on the edge of something vast and dangerous. I stayed there long after her taillights disappeared, staring at the spot where she'd stood. I thought of confronting her that night, but what good would it do? She'd lie, cry, maybe twist it until I was the villain for not trusting her. I knew the pattern. Elise could spin guilt into silk when she wanted to. When I got home, I deleted the tracking app. Not because I was done, but because I had enough. Enough evidence. Enough certainty. Now, I needed something else. Something final. I started researching. Lawyers. Private investigators. Ways to uncover financial trails. But the idea that burned brightest wasn't legal. It was personal. I didn't want just a clean separation. I wanted a reckoning. 2 nights later, I found what I needed in her email drafts folder, a half-written message to Ryan. She hadn't sent it yet. "You make me feel alive again. I can't keep pretending with him. I'll tell him soon. I promise." That word, pretending, hit me like a slap. I closed the laptop, my reflection trembling in the dark screen. Pretending. So that's what our marriage had become to her. A performance, a prop, a lie to be discarded when the credits rolled. The next morning, I watched her get ready for work. She wore the pearl earrings I gave her on our 5th anniversary, the same ones she'd worn to that concert. I realized then that she wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. She'd already moved on. She just hadn't told me yet. That's when the plan began to take shape. Elise's birthday was approaching, and she loved grand gestures. Every year, I outdid myself. Surprise dinners, weekend trips, elaborate scavenger hunts. She thrived on spectacle. This year, she'd get one. Just not the kind she expected. I spent the next few days carefully curating the setup. I invited a handful of her closest friends for a surprise party, pretending it was something small, intimate. I even told her boss, who loved her dearly, and he promised to keep her busy until 7 that evening. Meanwhile, I contacted Ryan. Not directly, of course. I used a dummy email, pretending to be part of a public relations team coordinating an industry mixer, a fake event that mirrored the party I was throwing. The location? Our house. Everything aligned perfectly. On the day of her birthday, I woke up early and made her breakfast, pancakes, strawberries, fresh coffee. She looked radiant, like guilt had given her a glow. She thanked me sweetly, kissed my cheek, and left for work, promising she'd be home late. Perfect. By sunset, the house was ready, soft lights, gentle music, wine on the counter. Her friends would arrive later. Ryan would arrive first. At 7 sharp, headlights swept across the driveway. My heart thudded. I stood by the living room window, watching him step out of his sleek black car, adjusting his jacket. He looked every bit the confident charmer I'd imagined. When I opened the door, his face froze. He hadn't expected me. Ryan, right? I said evenly. Elise isn't here yet, but come in. I think she'd like that. He hesitated, glanced around, then nodded cautiously. Sure. He stepped inside, glancing at the decorations. She didn't mention. She wouldn't. I interrupted. That's part of the surprise. I poured him a drink, offered one for myself, and we stood there in the uneasy quiet of 2 men who knew exactly what the other was thinking. He started to speak, but I cut him off. I know who you are, and what's been happening. His expression hardened, jaw tightening. Look, man. No, I said softly. You don't get to talk yet. He froze, the air between us growing thick. I'm not here to fight, I said, my voice calm, steady, even as my pulse thundered. I just want her to see exactly what she's built. So, you're going to stay. You're going to smile when she walks through that door. And when she does, when she realizes this isn't the fantasy she thought it was, you'll both finally understand what pretending really feels like. The sound of a car door closing outside cut through the silence. Elise was home. Ryan looked toward the door, then back at me. The lock clicked. The door opened. Her voice, light and unsuspecting, floated in from the hallway. Honey, you won't believe the day I had. And then she saw him. Her bag slipped from her hand. Her smile vanished. Her eyes darted from me to Ryan and back again, the color draining from her face. Happy birthday, Elise, I said quietly. For a few seconds, no one breathed. The only sound in the room came from the faint music drifting from the Bluetooth speaker, some light piano piece I'd queued up earlier to make the atmosphere feel elegant. Now it played mockingly, the notes almost cruel in their softness. Elise stood frozen in the doorway, still clutching the doorknob like she needed its weight to stay upright. Ryan looked like he wanted to disappear. Her voice, when it came, was thin and trembling. What is this? I smiled, though it felt wrong on my face. A surprise party. For your birthday. You like surprises, don't you? She blinked, trying to process, her gaze flicking between the decorations, the candles, the wine, the empty glasses on the counter, and then to Ryan, standing there like a guilty schoolboy. The realization hit her fast. She stepped forward slowly, her lips parting as she whispered, "Oh my God." I stepped closer, setting down my glass. You can put the act away now, Elise. You're among friends. Or lovers. Whatever the word is this week. Evan, she began, but the word fell apart halfway out of her throat. Ryan finally spoke. Listen, man, maybe we should just. I turned to him sharply. Maybe you should stay quiet, man. You've done enough talking with her already, haven't you? His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Elise took a small step toward me, tears already gathering. Please, not like this. I tilted my head. Not like what? Not like the way you walked into that bar last Thursday. Not like the way you smiled at him like I didn't exist. The words came easily, almost rehearsed. They'd been sitting inside me for weeks, waiting for this release. She flinched. You followed me. Would it surprise you? I asked. You've been living in your own play for months. I just wanted a seat in the audience. Her hands trembled as she set her purse down on the table. Evan, please, we can talk. Oh, we're talking. Finally. Her friends were due in 30 minutes, but I wasn't sure I wanted them to come anymore. This wasn't the spectacle I'd originally imagined. It was raw, unscripted, and entirely too human. I watched her chest rise and fall, her shoulders shaking under the weight of everything she hadn't said. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. Look, I didn't mean to. I cut him off again, quieter this time. Don't insult us both. You meant every second of it. You knew she was married. You knew I existed. But you still texted her love songs, didn't you? Sent her pictures, whispered about leaving me. He looked away. His silence was confirmation enough. Elise covered her mouth with her hand. I could see the tears now, but I wasn't sure if they were for me or for him. or for the fact that she'd been caught. I poured another drink, the clink of the bottle loud in the heavy air. You know, I used to love the way you looked at concerts, I said, almost to myself. You'd close your eyes, sway to the music, completely lost in it. I thought it was beautiful. I thought you were mine in those moments. But now I know, you were just rehearsing, practicing for when it wasn't me standing next to you. Evan, stop. I turned toward her, my voice calm again. You bought 2 front-row tickets, Elise. 2. And you didn't even invite your husband. You didn't even have the decency to lie about it properly. Her knees seemed to buckle slightly, and she leaned on the back of a chair. I'm sorry, she whispered. It wasn't supposed to. Wasn't supposed to what? Happen? You think affairs are accidents? You think a kiss just slips out of nowhere? Ryan tried to interject again, stepping forward. You don't understand. Don't, I snapped. The edge in my tone stopped him mid-step. For a moment, the 3 of us stood there, trapped in a silence thick enough to drown in. The lights flickered slightly from the storm outside, shadows stretching across the walls like ghosts. Elise's phone buzzed on the counter. She reached for it instinctively, but I grabbed it first. The message preview flashed briefly before fading. A friend asking, are we still on for tonight? I laughed. Still on, huh? You must have had quite the evening planned. Her face crumpled. I didn't mean for any of this to happen this way. Neither did I said softly. But here we are. She sank onto a chair, covering her face with her hands. The sight should have made me feel something. Pity, rage, anything. But I just felt tired. Exhausted down to my bones. You said once, I murmured. That surprises keep love alive. That routine kills it. I guess you found your surprise, didn't you? She looked up at me through wet lashes. Please don't do this. I set the phone down on the table between us. Do what exactly? You've already done everything. The doorbell rang. All 3 of us froze. Through the front window, headlights glowed in the driveway, her friends arriving right on time. Elise's head snapped toward me in panic. Oh God, Evan, please. Don't let them see this. Please. I met her gaze. There was a flicker of satisfaction somewhere inside me, a vindictive spark that wanted her to feel the humiliation I'd lived with quietly for weeks. But beneath that satisfaction was something darker, an ache that wouldn't go away. Don't worry, I said finally. I'm not a monster. Go clean your face. She hurried toward the hallway, wiping her tears, while I opened the door. Hey, one of her friends said brightly, holding a gift bag. Where's the birthday girl? I smiled faintly. Just freshening up. Come in. As they entered, chatting and laughing, I glanced at Ryan. He stood stiffly near the corner, looking like a man who'd stumbled into a trap. You should leave, I whispered. Through the back door. He hesitated. Are you sure? I leaned closer. If you stay, you'll be the story she tells for years. The mistake that ruined everything. Run while you still can. He didn't argue. He slipped quietly toward the back, disappearing into the night. Elise emerged moments later, face washed, eyes red but hidden under hastily applied makeup. Her friends clapped and hugged her, oblivious. I stood by the kitchen island, watching her perform her role again, smiling, laughing, pretending nothing was wrong. She avoided my gaze all evening. When the guests finally left, the silence that followed was unbearable. The candle flames flickered low, shadows trembling across the walls. She turned to me, voice trembling. Why did you do that? Because I wanted you to feel what it's like, I said. To stand in front of people and pretend. To keep smiling while everything inside you collapses. Her tears spilled again. You could have just talked to me. I tried, I said quietly. You were too busy listening to other music. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. 2 strangers wearing the faces of people who used to be in love. Then I handed her a small box from my pocket. Inside were the concert tickets, neatly folded. I thought you might want these back, I said. She looked at them like they were radioactive. I stepped past her toward the stairs, pausing halfway up. You can keep the house. The memories. The performances. I'm done being part of the show. Her sob followed me as I closed the bedroom door behind me. Downstairs, the music stopped, leaving only the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of rain. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, hands trembling, not from anger now, but from something colder. Finality. In the dark, I could almost hear the echo of applause fading away. But the show wasn't over yet. Not until I delivered the encore she never saw coming. The next morning dawned gray and heavy, the kind of light that feels like it's pressing down on you. Elise was already gone. Her side of the bed was cold, the sheets neatly folded as if she'd tried to erase any trace of herself. But I could still smell her perfume, faint and lingering, stubborn like the ghost of a memory that refused to leave. I sat there for a long time, staring at the ceiling. My head was quiet in a way it hadn't been in weeks. No more guessing. No more questions. Just a hollow space where the ache used to live. I thought I'd feel angry again, but instead there was this eerie calm, the kind that comes when the storm has already torn through and there's nothing left to destroy. She'd texted sometime before dawn, staying at my sister's for a few days. I'll call later. I didn't reply. The night before had burned everything down, and we both knew there was no rebuilding it. But endings, I've learned, don't always happen cleanly. They unravel, thread by thread, until the fabric of what you once had is nothing but scraps. I showered, dressed, and drove downtown. Not to see her. That part of me was finished, but to see him. Ryan Keller's office was in a glass tower near the river, a sleek space filled with people who thought they were changing the world one playlist at a time. I didn't make an appointment. I just walked in, the receptionist blinking at me as I asked, "Ryan here?" She smiled politely. "Do you have a meeting?" "Tell him it's Evan," I said. "He'll want to see me." Her brow furrowed slightly, but she called upstairs anyway. 2 minutes later, Ryan appeared, all charm and cologne and expensive regret. The sight of him made my stomach twist, but I didn't show it. "Evan," he said cautiously, "didn't expect to see you here." "I bet you didn't," I said. "Can we talk?" He hesitated, then gestured toward a small conference room. "Sure." Inside, the walls were glass, and sunlight cut through them like interrogation lights. We sat across from each other at a long table. "I'm not here to fight," I began. "You've already won whatever game you were playing. But I want you to understand something." He folded his hands. "Go ahead." "I loved her," I said simply. "For 8 years, I built my life around her. And she built part of hers around you, without ever thinking about the wreckage left behind. So before you decide what comes next, before you start thinking you can turn this into a fairy tale, I want you to remember what she's capable of. Because one day, it won't be me sitting across from you. It'll be someone else she's lied to." He looked down. The smirk that had once lived on his face was gone. "I didn't plan for this to happen," he said quietly. "Neither did I replied. "But here we are." I stood to leave, but before I reached the door, he called out, "She really did love you, you know. She told me that." I turned back. Then maybe she should have told me that instead. I walked out before he could answer. Back home, I started packing. Not much, a few clothes, some books, my father's old watch, the photo of our kids at the lake. Everything else could stay. The house felt like a stage after the actors had left, still echoing with lines that meant nothing now. As I zipped my bag, my phone buzzed. "Elise again. Can we talk tonight? Please. I need to explain." I stared at the screen for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard before I typed. "Not tonight. Not anymore." Then I turned off the phone. I didn't know exactly where I was going. Just away. Away from the walls that had heard too many lies. Away from the ghost of laughter that wasn't real anymore. I ended up at the coast, the kind of place where the ocean drowns out your thoughts whether you want it to or not. I rented a small cabin overlooking the water. No Wi-Fi, no neighbors, just wind and salt and time. The first few days, I barely spoke. I walked the shoreline, letting the cold waves soak my jeans, the sand grinding between my toes. The sea has a way of erasing things, if you let it. Footsteps, mistakes, names whispered in anger. I thought about Elise sometimes, of course. About her laughter, the way she used to rest her head on my shoulder during quiet movies, the tiny scar on her wrist she got when she tripped during our honeymoon. But the more I thought about her, the less she seemed real, like a character I'd written once, a story that had already ended. One night, as the tide came in under a bruised sky, I finally opened my laptop. The document I'd started weeks ago, my evidence journal, I'd called it, was still there. Dates, times, places, proof. I deleted it. Every line, every timestamp. I watched the cursor blink at the top of the now empty page, and for the first time, I felt something close to peace. It was over. The next morning, I woke to a sunrise so sharp and bright it hurt my eyes. The horizon bled gold, and the water shimmered like liquid glass. I brewed coffee on the porch and realized that, For the first time in months, the silence didn't scare me. It felt earned. I stayed by the coast for another week. During that time, Elise sent more messages. Apologies, explanations, promises. I didn't answer any of them. She even called once, her voice breaking in the voicemail. I made a mistake, she said. Please, just talk to me. But there's a moment in every broken thing where trying to fix it only makes it worse. We passed that moment long ago. When I finally drove back into the city, I didn't go home. I went to my lawyer. The divorce papers were simple. We had no fight left for custody, no property wars, no screaming matches. Just signatures and silence. By the time I left his office, the sun was setting behind the skyline. I stood on the sidewalk for a while, watching people hurry past, their faces lit by their phones, their lives rushing forward. For the first time, I didn't feel left behind. Before heading back to the coast, I made one last stop, the arena where she'd seen that concert. The posters were long gone, replaced by new shows, new promises. Still, I walked up to the ticket booth, the same one where she must have stood smiling, thinking of him. I bought a single ticket to whatever band was playing that night. Front row. When the music started, I closed my eyes. Not because I was thinking of her, but because I was finally thinking of myself. The sound was loud, alive, pure. It shook the air, washed through me, filled the empty spaces she'd left behind. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't pretending. I never spoke to Elise again. The papers arrived 3 weeks later, neatly sealed. I signed them, mailed them back, and that was that. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about those tickets, how something as small as a pair of front row seats could unravel an entire marriage. But maybe that's what truth is like. It doesn't crash through the door screaming. It slips quietly into your hand, printed on glossy paper, daring you to read the fine print. She bought 2 front row tickets. I never got invited. But in the end, I realized something far better. I didn't need to be part of her show, because I'd finally stepped into my own.